Hi, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Arkariem with Karie Gonia and Edgar Stephens. Now, our format has shifted just slightly. Instead of asking two questions, today we're going to ask one another one question about a specific topic. And today's topic is beginnings. Now, before we dive in with our questions, we are going to introduce ourselves. Karie, would you tell everyone who you are, please?
Hi, everyone. My name is Karie Gonia, and I am a facilitator in a therapy called Family Constellation Therapy. I help people clean up intergenerational trauma.
And I am Edgar Stephens. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, and I offer coaching and consulting services to individuals, nonprofit organizations, and to businesses. Together, we are Arkariem, and today is all about beginnings. With that, Karie, do you want to ask me the first question, or do you want me to ask you the first question?
I would love to ask you the first question. You know, beginnings are my favorite. I am curious how people can harness the power of the mind and the imagination to create new beginnings, especially when there are neural pathways tied to trauma or old patterns.
Okay, so in my world and in the work that I do, so much of it is based on being able to imagine, think about, even get an inkling for whatever the new beginning or the new thing is. Now, in particular, when we take a look at habits, when we take a look at the neural pathways, what we are used to doing, we have to remember that the subconscious mind is always going to want to keep us in what we know. So the subconscious mind says, well, wait a minute, I've never done this new thing before. So it could be scary. It could be dangerous. It could be something that causes things to change too much in my life with the other people in my life, my relationships. It may fail. So our mind goes to all sorts of different places when we're thinking about beginning something new. Yet, in order to truly start to go down a new pathway, unless there's something cosmic, which does happen, something spiritual that does happen, that moves us into a new direction, we must imagine what that first step looks like. Before we imagine the first step, quite often, I think it's good to imagine, well, where is it that you want to get to? I often will say it's like having a snapshot of a place that you want to visit, someplace you want to go. So, for instance, if you're thinking about going to Hawaii and you are looking at a postcard of Hawaii and you think, wow, that's someplace I really want to go, that's someplace I want to be, you have to remember that when you're looking at that postcard, you're only seeing what's inside of that frame. You can't see what's over here, what's above, or what's below. You can't smell everything that's going on. You can't hear everything that's going on. But you have a snapshot in your mind. So you can imagine what it would be to go to this place, to experience this place, to watch the sunset that's in this postcard. When you get there, the reality is always going to be different from what you saw in the snapshot or the postcard. But it is seeing the postcard, it is thinking about that in destination that makes you take the first step, because then I'm able to say, well, what would I need to know that I'm going to Hawaii? Well, first of all, I'd have to have the block of time when I'm going. So let me take a look at the calendar. I'd have to see, can I fly? When would I fly? What's it going to cost to fly? Where am I going to stay when I'm there? I have to have all the steps as I'm headed that direction. And sometimes we don't know the steps until the steps appear or until we're required to actually grab the steps. That said, what I have found over and over again, Karie, is that whenever I'm beginning something new or whenever I'm working with someone about beginning something new, if I can just get them to imagine, play with the possibilities of what the end step or the end destination or the end feeling may be, then we can work backwards all the way to the first step. And that's when I say, now just take a first step, just a first step. I'm not asking you to go all the way to Hawaii. I'm not asking you to, change your eating habits radically tomorrow. I'm not asking you to, start a new career tomorrow. I'm just asking you to take one step in that direction. And this is the exciting part for me, is that when we take one step in a new direction, so often spirit will line it up to go, oh, well, here's your next step. And here's your next step. Oh, and now I'm going to open this up. And time and again, I've heard clients say, and I have experienced it myself, that when I take a step in a new direction, the other steps somehow magically appear. And I hear over and again, you'll never believe what happened. And I always believe what happens because I've seen it time and again. You take one step and then something else opens up and something else opens up. And soon you have a new beginning.
I love that. I feel like if you are brave, I always tell clients that, and you take that first step, even towards healing, it's like spirit will rush in and kind of do the rest for you and lay it out. So I love that. Thank you.
Now, my question for
Mhm.
you. So, uh, if you had the power to order or to make the world begin something new, the whole world, everybody in the world, begin or make something new, what would that something new be?
Wow. Gosh, I feel like that is such a powerful question, Mark. It's interesting. I feel like for me, my brain just always goes here. I feel like the new beginning would be giving them the courage to heal, because a lot of people get so used to being on autopilot and being in again in those neural pathways and feeling stuck or trapped. I hear that a lot. I would love for everyone to heal even a little bit, because then I feel like the road will just open up and love can flow in abundance and magic and all sorts of really wonderful things. So I feel like that's always going to be my answer. It's like just the courage to face the dark without the judgment and the criticism and the shame and everything we've been programmed for. And I think to go into the healing knowing that beginnings are possible, that new roads are possible, new, just there's new possibility everywhere.
Now, Karie, I said, of course, it's one question, so I'm going to call this part B to that,
Okay.
only because well, because you opened up something really good there. You basically said, if there was this something new, it would be to step onto this path to healing, this road to healing. So, taking the question you asked me and the question that I just asked you, if you could generalize it, what would be that first step toward healing? What would someone have to do to begin a path toward healing?
I think sitting with themselves and witnessing, okay, I'm stuck in a pattern, or because I hear this a lot. You probably hear this a lot in your work too. I really pay attention to the stories that people come in and share with me. And it's always, I feel stuck or I feel trapped. So what that always indicates to me is they're going in a loop. There's some pattern, there's some pathway in their life that keeps leading them back to an endpoint that doesn't feel good. So, and most of the time, everyone's trying to outrun not feeling good and outrun that pain. And so I think just sitting with yourself and starting there, because I can speak of myself when I've been on my healing journey for decades, but I was so young when I kind of started, and I immediately just was like, oh my gosh, I've got to do all this work to get to the end. And I just kept trying to skip to the end. And now having some age and some wisdom within me, I'm like, man, just sitting with feeling uncomfortable, but sitting with the possibility that there is a different way, you know. Hopefully that answered your question, but I think just sitting with it, facing
It
it,
has
witnessing it.
It answered my question, and it brings up just making another little play on that. It brings up, and I'm going to not say the story the correct way,
Mm,
but somebody I heard the story once. Somebody said, 50 years old and I want to go and get my degree, my master's degree.
mhm,
But that's going to take 2 years, maybe 3 years, with my job, with my family. And they said, 2, 3 years, that's a long time. And the person responds to them and says, yes, but 2 or 3 years could go by and you could not work toward that. You could
mhm.
work toward it or not work toward it, but the 2 or 3 years is going to pass either way.
Yeah.
You decide what you're going to do with that time. You decide what, if you're going to begin something and begin something new, the time is going to pass anyway. Your life is going to
Mhm,
keep going anyway. And so if you choose that pathway to healing, if you step on that journey, even if it is uncomfortable, because it will be, because we have to dig
mhm.
into these things, the time is going to pass anyway. So do you pass it in allowing yourself always to avoid what's uncomfortable? Or do you take a step into discomfort? Do you take a step into the thing that you're avoiding and maybe find out that you're bigger than the thing that you've been avoiding? And I think that that to me is what beginnings are really all about.
I agree. And it kind of goes back to the question I asked you of if you're stuck in trauma, it's really hard to imagine a different way. So I feel like they go together. You have to sit with that pain and befriend it in a way in order to heal it so that you can have the new beginning,
Hmm.
which,
There's a tech. Sorry, you were going to say
oh
something.
no, I was going to say, which I feel like the world is doing now.
Hmm.
We have all
Yes,
figured out, like, we have to create a new beginning, a new way of being for ourselves, our families, our communities, for the world.
I have used this technique often when someone says, there's this thing I want to do, but there's this part of my mind that just keeps yelling at me and keeps
Yeah.
telling me I can't do it, or I'm going to fail, or I'm not going to have support, or whatever it may be. And I say, you know what? Sit your little boy or your little girl down, because think of it like that little voice, like a part of yourself that's like the child going, I want it now, or I can't, I, whatever, the child that's like screaming. And don't scream back at the child, because that just makes the child more upset. Listen to the child, look at the child, tell the child it's going to be okay, give the child, a treat or something like that, and see if the child can calm down, because that voice, that critic, it does want to play, because remember, the subconscious mind wants to keep you in what you know. So that's just your little self going, oh, wait a minute, we're scared of this, what if it doesn't work out? What if we don't get it? What if we don't win? What if, what if, what if, what if, what if? And all this what ifs keep us from trying something new. So if you talk to that little child, that little voice inside, and just, like you say, go into it, listen to it, and allow it to be there, and then let it calm down, you find on the other side then the strength of the courage to be able to step into that new thing.
I saw a beautiful quote the other night. It's from a company called, I believe it's Generation Mindful. They create tools and workbooks and playthings for little kids to teach them about their emotions and to be mindful. But the quote, and I'm paraphrasing, but was something like, instead of telling a child, like, don't feel that, or we don't cry in this household, which I grew up with that, like, get on their level and let them feel their emotions so that we can shift these generational programs so the kids can feel and be present and create new beginnings and be in their imagination and play. And it made me emotional, because I'm like, there's so much freedom in that for all of us, you know.
Imagine,
Imagine.
allowing a
Oh,
child to actually feel what they need to
I
feel. That sounds
know.
great. So, if there's anyone out there listening, or if you've been listening, if you have a question, if you have a topic that you would like for us to cover or for us to talk about, or you just want to reach out and say, hey, that made a difference, or talk about this, or whatever it may be, you can write to us at talk2arkariem@gmail.com. That's TALK, the number two, arkariem@gmail.com. Now, one thing that we always like to do, that I always like to do, that is not changing, is Karie always takes us out with something very beautiful. And today's subject being about beginnings, Karie, I'm going to ask for you to just take us out with some thought that you have about beginnings, about going into something new.
I love that you brought up inner children. I always tell people, work backwards, right? Go back to your little self and let them imagine and play and create and re-teach you that beginnings are possible every second of every day. Be be present with yourself, be patient, but be open to magic happening.